What was forbidden to be eaten of by the Israelites? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Leviticus on Walking Through the Bible.
His word, the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Leviticus chapter 7. We're going to be reading from verses 22 to 27. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Leviticus chapter 7, beginning at verse 22. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, You shall not eat of any fat of ox or sheep or goat, and the fat of an animal that dies naturally, and the fat of what is torn by wild beasts may be used in any other way, but you shall by no means eat it. For whoever eats the fat of the animal of which men offer an offering made by fire to the Lord, the person who eats it shall be cut off from among his people. Moreover, you shall not eat any blood in any of your dwellings, whether of bird or of beast. Whoever eats any blood, that person shall be cut off from his people. In our last 5 episodes, we have been looking at the expansion of God's laws concerning the 5 sacrifices discussed earlier in the book: the burnt offering, the grain offering, the sin offering, the trespass offering, and the peace offering. Each of these sacrifices had their own specific rules of how to offer the sacrifices, how the animal was prepared, and what would happen to the leftovers. Although to us all of these details might seem a bit much, God is revealing to us and to Israel in this book that he is holy, and therefore if they were to approach him, they too must be holy, separate from among the nations, and obey his will. After all, he is the all-wise creator of this universe. He created us. It is him that we are worshiping. Therefore, if we're to be pleasing to God, we must worship him his way. Anything else would raise man to be equal in authority with God, which to God is completely unacceptable. Coming down to verse 22, we find that Israel was given 2 commands of what not to eat. The first concerned the fat of the ox, sheep, or goat, the animals that were offered on the altar to God. They were not allowed to eat of it. The fat here is not talking about what we would call the fat, that of the outward meat, but the fatty portions attached to the organs on the inside of the animal. This would make sense, for it was these parts in the animal sacrifices that would be burned on the altar of burnt offering and were considered to be the Lord's. God didn't reveal to us here as to why he chose these sections of the animal, but he did, and so Israel wasn't to eat it. If the animal was offered on the altar, obviously the fat would be burned up. However, what if one of those animals died naturally or was killed by a wild animal? What was to be done with the fat? Well, it could be used in any other way, but they were not allowed to eat it. We do not see this restriction repeated for us in the New Testament, so this restriction is not commanded for Christians, a point that is worth noting. What would happen to the one who eats of the fat of these animals? The person would be cut off from among the people. This is a harsh punishment for sure, for to us it is just food, but in this case these animals were the ones offered to the Lord, so in disobeying the Lord here and eating the fat of these animals, it's like you're stealing from God, which is why this type of punishment is justified. Verse 26 then goes on to tell us that Israel was not to eat of any blood, whether from bird or beast. This is the second time in Leviticus that we have seen this prohibition, the other being in Leviticus 3:17, along with the prohibition of eating fat. Some might have a question as to why. Well, we need to remember that in Genesis 9 verse 4, Noah and his descendants were forbidden from eating blood because the life is in the blood. The blood was thus symbolic of life and was used in their sacrifices to God as atonement for sin. Therefore, they were not to eat of it. Well, we're not under the Old Covenant. Does this law not apply to us today? If there was no verse condemning such in the New Testament, then a strong case could be made for that. However, when we get to our study of Acts, in Acts 15:29, we're going to find that even today, God has commanded us not to eat the blood. That is something that a Christian needs to consider, for there are many delicacies that are prepared in different cultures that contain the actual blood of the animal. Just so we're not confused, though, when you have rare steak or meats like it, the red juice that runs out on your plate is not blood. It is protein from the muscle tissue of the meat. The blood has been drained before cooking. So for all of those steak lovers out there, God doesn't require you to burn your steaks before eating. The prohibition against actual blood is still in force, however. What would happen under the Old Covenant to those who ate blood? They would be cut off from among his people. Again, this is a harsh punishment, but eating blood is like eating the life itself, which is akin to murder. So that's why such a harsh penalty was enacted, in order to prevent such from happening. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Leviticus chapter 7, verses 28 to 38, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.